Hey guys, I'm continuing my series of garden hacks, and I've already created quite a few videos, and I plan on creating more videos about gardening hacks that save you time, money, energy, effort, and produce more harvests, whether you're growing vegetables or if you're into flower gardening. Both work equally well. These tips will help your garden flourish, and so I'm going to head outside and show you one of my favorite things, which most people are terrified of what I'm going to talk about next, but I think it's really an important thing to have in your garden because they're in my garden every evening around sunset. But because of Hollywood, most people are frightened of these little creatures. So let's go out to the garden and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So guys, what I'm referring to is the common bat. And this bat is not the vampire bat. It's not a bat that's going to attack people, but it will eat a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of flying pests and insects around the garden. Every evening, if I'm carefully watching in the summer, I'll see these bats flying around, swooping down and eating different types of insects that are going to possibly lay eggs around my vegetables or other plants that are going to get attacked. But what you can do to build one of these simple bat houses, the bat houses online are rather expensive, some of them $40, $50, $60, but you can get one of these small bird houses, plug up the hole in the front. I've just taken a piece of sticky substance and tape something to the front of it so this hole is now plugged. Remove the bottom and allow the bats to enter from the base, and put in a wooden dowel pin, wedge it in there, or put in a metal rod across there so the bats will have something to cling on when they're sleeping. But a bat house, now this one is really low and I've just got it here for demonstration purposes, and it'll be relocated once I finish the video. But you need to place this 15 feet high, preferably on the side of a building, on the side of a tree, somewhere where it's protected, but you want to make sure it gets a little bit of sunlight too, because you don't want it in a northern area, a northern side of your house where it doesn't get enough sun. So the bats need a little bit of warmth during the day while they're sleeping before they come out in the evening. So a bat house like this, if you buy a birdhouse from your big box store, you're going to be a lot better off by buying one of those, removing the bottom, plugging up the front, and then going with that rather than a traditional bat house that can be really expensive. So my first suggestion, my first tip is to buy 3 or 4 of these, put them around your yard in those areas as I stated previously, and you'll see a difference in insects very quickly, because up to, I think it says that a bat can eat its own weight in insects in 24 hours. So remember, that's our first tip, and we'll move on to the next one. Now, the second garden hack I want to talk about is saving yourself a lot of pain in the future. If you're young, that's great. If you're getting started gardening early, then you'll learn a lot more than the average person over time. But one thing you have to realize is your body takes a toll when you do these types of chores, and you want to try to save your knees as much as possible. Everyone says if you want to save your back, which is really important, you want to lift with your knees, but your knees need support too. And these small folding stools are one of my favorite things around the garden. I can sit next to a planter box, sit on this and work from this directly. I can move it around from bed to bed, but squatting or sitting directly on the ground can be very uncomfortable. So I'll put a link to these down below. But these little folding stools are so great because I can just fold them. Sorry about that, I know it's probably loud, but you can fold them like that, put them in a pouch, maybe on the back of your lawnmower if you have a tool carry like I do, and you can move it around the yard, and then you can just pop it out and use it whenever you need to. So saving your knees would be my second tip. Find ways like this that you can prevent your knees from wearing out. I have a friend who likes to run marathons, and his knees are nearly shot. So doing something like this will save you a lot of problems in the future. If you're still young, and if you're older like me, you're going to want these because they will save you a lot of pain at the end of the day. Now, the next tip or trick that I've talked about before in other videos is pretty common, but sometimes people forget about it. It involves a toothbrush, but a toothbrush can really help you harvest different fruits, vegetables, and even some flowers can benefit from this. Let me take this out to the garden and I'll show you exactly how to use it. Now, the way you use one of these toothbrushes is you're doing pollination, you're doing the work of bees, but you're doing it in a more specific way from plant to plant. You can do it within the plant from flower to flower, or you can go take the pollen and go to another tomato plant. So you're just basically cutting your toothbrush on, holding it up to the flower, and just moving it around throughout the tomato plant, and also moving on to other plants. Another trick is you can just shake the tomato plant and help it release pollen, but a toothbrush can go from flower to flower, whether you're talking about cucumber, squash, tomatoes, even just your regular flower beds, you could do this. If you want to really help your plants, it will make them healthier, and especially in the vegetable garden, you'll have more produce overall. So just remember, a toothbrush is great. You can use the toothbrush you have inside. You can just buy a special tip just for your garden, and that way you leave it out in your greenhouse or wherever you have your tools at. Bring the bottom portion, the vibrating part of your toothbrush, hook it up, and then just go from plant to plant and spend an afternoon working doing this. And you'll only have to do this maybe once or twice in the growing season, and it'll make a really big difference. So the next hack or trick that I like to use is I use this carry bucket for my tools, but it's more than just a carry bucket. It prevents my tools from rusting, keeps them dry and clean. I'm going to bring the camera in closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. But this is another tip that I use quite often. I don't fill the bucket all the way up with sand, just halfway. But let me show you what I'm doing here. Now, my most used tools, the things that I use around the garden the most often, are these 4 items: scissors, a digging tool, and a smaller digging tool, and a hori knife, which is a Japanese garden tool. But anyways, what I do is after I get through using them, I stick them down in the sand to get them to dry out, to prevent any rust from forming, and it keeps them very dry, because a wet tool will quickly become a rusty tool. So by storing them in here with a half small bucket filled with sand, it keeps them dry. I know exactly where they're at. So this is a little trick that I've been using for a long time. I'll just throw this in the back of my transport cart and pull it around the garden. And I know as soon as I get through, I can just stick them back in there, and they'll stay really dry and won't get rusty in a short amount of time from too much moisture. So the next hack involves wood destroying insects, and they did quite a number on my greenhouse. I have a lot of treated lumber around my garden, whether it's fencing or shelving or decking, and these insects can do so much damage over a period of time. Year after year they come back, but I'll show you an easy way to stop them. These are called the wood boring bees. I'm going to show you some damage they've done inside the greenhouse. I have the doors to the greenhouse open now because everything's cleaned out. We've passed our last frost date, but they're constantly coming in, and you wouldn't think they would come into a greenhouse and start doing this, but I'll show you up close exactly what they're doing. But they can do a lot of damage to wood, and there's a really simple way to stop them from doing this damage. Let me show you up close, and then I'll take you to where the solution is on my back deck area. So this is a perfect example of what these little bees can do. Some people might call them a bumblebee, but it's just a wood boring bee. They get into the wood year after year. They'll come back. They'll drill a little bit further into the holes, and they'll lay eggs in there. And each year these bees will come back over and over. So let me take you to my back deck area, and I'll show you a quick solution of how to keep them from destroying your deck, your greenhouse, whatever. Even if it's treated lumber, they can still get in there. And even a lot of people will say painted wood will stop them, or stained wood, but they've actually, in my case, they went through paint, they went through stain, so there's really only one 100% sure way to get them under control. So this is one type of wood boring bee trap that I've got, and it's basically just a piece of wood on top of a clear plastic box. The bees go into the holes, they go down into the plastic box area, and they get trapped. This has been hanging here for about a week and a half, and it's caught quite a few bees. They can't get out, they can't escape, and they can't do any more damage to your wood, your deck, whatever, your greenhouse. But I'll show you how many are actually in here from beneath. Okay, so it's a little bit blurry here, but you can see that we've caught quite a few of these wood boring bees. And the whole secret is they go into these angled holes in the wood. They go into this plastic area, and they can't find their way back out. I'll put a link to these in the description, but these are one of the most important things I've ever had to catch these. It's hard to get them under control. I've tried stains, I've tried paints, and I even show you a homemade version real quick before we head back to the greenhouse. Now this trap I made myself with just a mason jar and a piece of wood. Unfortunately, it's still a little bit of splitting because I put in the hanger a little bit too deep into the wood. But anyways, I've got quite a few of these hanging around the back deck area. There's one bee trapped in this particular one. I'm going to have to do a little bit of remodeling work on it, but they're really easy to make with just a common drill and a mason jar. So if you don't want to pay and they're not expensive, they're around $20 if you buy one pre-made. But if you want to make it yourself, you can probably cut that price in less than half and do it yourself. But they work either way. It's just a trick that they get into the glass or the clear area, and they can't find their way back out to the outside. So just remember that if you want to do it yourself, or if you want to look in the link and order one directly, I'll put one down there. So just try these if you're having a big problem with wood boring bees. Now, if you're like me and you enjoy sitting in the garden either in the early morning or the late evening, there's always that problem with biting gnats and mosquitoes and things like that. We have some swings, Adirondack chairs, and if you plant something like this around them, it will help cut down on those pesky flying bloodsuckers. But this smells exactly like citronella to me, and it's lemon balm. And there's lots of different things you could plant around a seating area, such as mint, lemon balm, and things like that that have strong smells that keep the insects away that will want to bite you. So that's my next tip, is planting something like this. I've planted it once in small, very, not even gallon size. These are small, maybe quart size containers, and it has continually gotten bigger. I actually had to cut it back. It took over this entire 4x8 bed, but you can plant this in an area that gets an adequate amount of sunlight, and it will spread very quickly, as will mint and other things like that that put out a nice strong smell, and it will keep the insects away from your seating area. Now, as I mentioned earlier about storing your tools in here to prevent rust, if your tools already have a lot of rust problems, then you can take some vinegar, put it in a small container, and allow your tool to stay in the vinegar solution for about 30 minutes to an hour. When you take it out, take a wire brush like this one, clean the rust off. The worst, if you have much worse problem with rust, it may take more than an hour. It may be 2 to 3 hours, but you don't want to leave it in there overnight, but just the 2 hour maximum, and then try to remove as much rust as you can. So vinegar can be a great way to remove rust from your favorite gardening tools, and you don't have to buy any new ones. Now, one of my favorite plants to have around the garden is the hosta, because they come back a little better each year. You can start out with a 1 gallon size. In a period of years, they'll just continually grow and grow and grow. This one, however, has been attacked many times when it was in the ground by the slugs, snails that get on it and start eating the plant. They absolutely love hosta. So what I've done is I've put it in a container and I've cut the bottom out so the root system can grow into the ground. It can continually get bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's protected through that edging. And I can put a little bit of salt or something around the edges, slug away, whatever it is, and that it doesn't get into the root system of the plant, but it protects the plant from the slugs. And slugs can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. So cutting the bottoms out of pots that you don't plan on moving and allow the plant to grow down into it. You could even do this with a tree, fruit trees and things like that, bushes, where you can have a little bit better control over the watering situation. And that way your plant will grow even healthier by its roots being able to grow into the ground, and you have a little bit of protection from insects and things like slugs and snails that will try to attack it. So something like this is a great way, especially if it's a cheap plant. You can get cheap planters from Dollar Tree, Dollar General, and those places, and you don't mind so much about cutting the bottoms out because they're not really that expensive to begin with. Now this right here is a lifesaver in the garden because I have a riding mower that constantly runs over things, sharp objects somewhere in the garden, and it develops a very, very small hole. I don't know how it happens, but it does always seem to happen. But also wheelbarrows over the winter time, the tires will leak down, they dry rot over time. But Fix-A-Flat is one of those things that you can use that will seal those tiny little holes. And it just drives me crazy to go out to the lawnmower wheelbarrow, pull it out, and then discover it's got a flat tire. So I've started buying 1 or 2 cans of these a year just to keep around the greenhouse. And so if I do have that problem, I can quickly, this will actually air it up because this is designed for truck tires. So it has a little bit more pressure than the ones you see for car tires, but it will air the tire back up and seal the small hole. Now, if you have a massive gash in your tire and it's just a big leaking air quickly, this is not going to help. But if it's just a very small hole, or if you've had the issue over the winter time of it leaking down, you just need to air it up and seal the tire properly around the rim. This will also do the trick for that. But as far as for my garden cart, my wheelbarrow, and my riding mower, anything that requires the tires to be aired up, this is a lifesaver, especially when you don't have a pump handy. You can just take this out to wherever your lawnmower wheelbarrow's at, fill it up, and you don't have to worry about an electric powered air in what am I trying to say here? The air pump that I usually drag around the yard, I have to have, it's not battery powered, it is electric. So I have to take it wherever the lawnmower is at. I don't want to mess the tire up by riding on the mower with the tire like that. So something like this will be very portable, and you can just easily carry it out to where you have your mower or your wheelbarrow. Now, your smartphone can be one of the most critical devices you have when you're trying to keep your garden organized. What I used to do is I used to save my plant tags and I would just put them in a drawer somewhere. And I would often forget about what I did with them. And also I would forget when I planted them and other critical information. So if you take a picture of your plant tags as you plant them, you can keep a record. You can label them. You can use editing software to put the information actually on the picture of the date you planted. And that way you know a lot more about where it came from, the date you planted it. So just remember, your smartphone can come in really handy when you're planting things. If you're doing like me, you plant a lot of things in the garden. It's hard to keep track of these plant tags, but on your phone, almost no one ever has their phone any more than 10 feet away from them at any time. Usually it's just stuck in their pocket. I'm going to show you one more thing that a smartphone is good for. It's a specific app. I don't have any connection with the app, but I've used it over and over so many times when I saw something in nature, when I was on a garden walk through a large garden. I wanted to know exactly what I was looking at. So let me take you out to the garden. I'll show you exactly how to use this app. So one of the things I like to use if I'm trying to identify a plant is the PictureThis app. It's on the App Store on Apple. I'm sure other devices and other platforms it's available too, but it's called PictureThis. But you just take a picture of whatever plant you're trying to identify, let it scan it, and it'll tell you information about the plant, what it is, the health of the plant. So it's really a great little app to have. It starts out as a free trial. I'm not sure how long the free trial is, so you'll have to look into it. Currently, it changes from time to time. But anyways, if you want to try to use it, it's really great. I love it, but it's just one of those things that if you're a serious gardener such as myself, something like this will help you quite a bit in identifying plants, especially if you're at a garden center and there's not a plant tag handy. You can just do a quick scan and you'll know exactly what it is. So guys, I hope these gardening hacks help you along the way in your gardening journey. Also, I'll put some end cards at the very end of the video where it shows some of the other gardening hacks that I've did along the way. Look for new videos coming out that have additional gardening hacks, and go back and watch some of the old ones too if you'd like to see some of those. So guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.